What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Toma Todito Show, and let's talk about what the hell we just witnessed 2 days ago. UFC 264 it came, it went, it was the first big live attendance crowd in Las Vegas. We got live attendance back in Las Vegas, the mecca of sports, definitely the mecca for MMA and boxing events. I mean, holy crap. Once Vegas took over for Atlantic City and for Madison Square Garden, Vegas has been it. That's the go-to place. And for the UFC has put Las Vegas on the map, on the world map, for the last 10, 15 years. At that, we had a live crowd, live attendance, jam-packed house, full of stars, music stars, social media personalities, movie stars. You had the former president, Donald Trump, show up. You had a stacked card from top to bottom, and because the fighters ended up feeling the importance behind this fight, they ended up feeling the moment, the noise, the crowd at that, the push that the crowd provides, that adrenaline rush that the crowd provides just walking onto the octagon, it's second to none. And the fighters felt it, and every single card from early prelims on were on. They were all entertaining. Let's talk about it, because the main event was obviously a trilogy fight, and I like for you guys to comment, shoot me a comment, shoot me an email, shoot me a tweet. I don't care. Just reach out to me. Let me know what you think about this trilogy fight now that we know how it ended. Where does it rank as your favorite trilogy fights that the UFC has put together? I mean, we're thinking back to Cain Velasquez Jr. dos Santos. We're thinking back to Dominic Cruz against Uriah Faber, a trilogy that the first fight began in the WEC prior to UFC taking ownership of that company, buying out that company. I mean, you got Matt Hughes against George St. Pierre. You got Matt Hughes against BJ Penn. You've had some big trilogy fights, some big names that have been involved in trilogies in the history of the UFC. Where does this one rank, in your opinion? Now, as far as the event that we just witnessed here a couple days back, it was definitely the highest grossing economically, financially. This was the biggest card. You had the entire ESPN crew there. Now, there were some news that were overshadowed. Ariel Helwani was let go. Ariel Helwani is someone who I look up to. Look at how small my platform is. Look at what the man has built. So that's somebody that I look up to. He was let go for his ongoing issues that he has with Dana White. Apparently, he's constantly been getting pushed around. This is dating back to the Fox Sports days, and now with ESPN, and he was let go, and now the ESPN anchors have moved in. Max Kellerman, who's most notably his best work has come by way of HBO boxing alongside Merchant and Jim Lampley. Listen. Now he's there. He's been part of First Take for several years now, alongside Stephen A. Smith, and they were there. It was a different scene. It was a hell of a scene. There was coverage from all around the world. There was media from all around the world. The eyes of the world were on this card. And you had coverage everywhere. I think even Julio Cesar Chavez was present there, who's normally covering boxing, obviously, and he was there doing the Spanish telecast for ESPN, I believe it was, that he was covering. So, listen, it was awesome. There's so much that we could get into. Let's just talk about the ones that ended up catching not just my eyes, but people's attention. Let's go to the main card. The main card, the opener to the main card was none other than Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley alone attracts eyeballs. He's able to attract the crowd just with his fun style that he has, that crazy style that he brings to the octagon, the look, the persona, everything. Sean O'Malley is starting to become one of the bigger stars that the UFC has right now, and they ended up bringing a last-minute stand-in Kris Moutinho. Now, pretty much nobody knew who Kris Moutinho was. He fought in local organizations. He ends up coming in with a 9-4 record, I believe it was. And he steps into the ring. People are right away looking at the way that he presented himself with green hair. He started getting peppered by shots. Sean O'Malley starts peppering him, catching him, kicks to the head, clean punches to the nose, to the forehead, to the eyes, hooks, overhands, kicks to the gut, you name it. Sean O'Malley was just having his way with Kris Moutinho, and Kris Moutinho continues to come forward. Now, people thought it was going to be an easy win. People see that Sean O'Malley's just dismantling his opponent, and Kris Moutinho continues to walk forward. He's talking to Sean O'Malley as he's doing so, and it starts getting a little bit more interesting and a little more impressive by the time that the first round ends. Most people are thinking that this is not going to last very much longer, that it's bound to end in the second round. We saw a lot of the same in the second round, and you heard the shift, and you could feel the shift, not just of the crowd, but you could sense the shift and start listening to how the opinions begin to change on behalf of the commentators, Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier. Their commentary begins to change, not so much from this guy is getting peppered by Sean O'Malley, but how impressed they were. And now all of a sudden you have these guys in awe of the effort that Kris Moutinho's leaving out there, of the heart, the chin that he's possessing and he's displaying. He continues to walk forward. At one point, Joe Rogan says that he's the green-headed zombie. And it was very similar to that. I mean, this guy's taken, I don't know this for a fact. I don't know because I haven't seen much about Kris Moutinho, but we're going to definitely see a lot more after a performance like the one that he put on against Sean O'Malley. I don't know if his biggest inspirations are the Diaz brothers, but he definitely fought like that. He fought like Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz, just keeps coming forward. They keep getting hit and they keep coming forward. That pressure that he put, he continued to press forward. You had Sean O'Malley on his bicycle, just backpedaling, still landing clean shots and kicks. So imagine the strength that's going forward and the strength to get his body out of danger. And even then, Moutinho had some very few and far in between, but had some good punches that he landed on Sean O'Malley. And Sean O'Malley was looking up at the screen, looking up at the clock, seeing how much longer was left in the rounds because he was gassing. This guy, the pressure that he put on Sean O'Malley, and even then Sean O'Malley was able to perform very well. The pressure that he put on him was second to none. And it turned people from doubters to fans. And he was one of the fighters that ended up getting the biggest ovation that night because he earned the people's respect. Not just the commentators, not just the other, the fellow fighters, but he gained the respect of the world. He put on an impressive performance. This ends up going to the third round, and the referee ends up stopping this in a moment where he had many chances to stop this. There was many opportunities and that indicated a possible stoppage because he was getting hurt from the first round on. Where he decided to jump in was definitely not the time to have stopped it because yes, he got hit several times, but it's not like he was out of it. Does it mean that it was a bad stoppage? No. As much damage as Moutinho took from Sean O'Malley, it was fine. It's better to get him out of there. Let's err on the side of safety because he took a lot of damage and it could only go downhill from there for Moutinho. Who knows how many years he lost of his career and of his life just with this type of performance. But he gained everybody's respect, and the man was not ready to quit. And this is what that old adage that people say, he's too brave for his own good. This is it. That's Kris Moutinho right there in a heartbeat. He's too brave for his own good, a la Arturo Gatti or Mickey Ward. You know, like that type of fighter right there. He's too brave for his own good. Kris Moutinho ends up losing. The fight gets stopped. Sean O'Malley comes away with an impressive win. They list it as a knockout in round 3. We move on to the next fight. Irene Aldana just put on a hell of a performance and takes out Yana Kunitskaya in the first round. I mean, this was stopped at the 4:35 mark of round 1. Irene Aldana came to work, and she did not disappoint, and she kept that trend going. The people's attention, the people's adrenaline was at an all-time high just from the first card that kicked off live, the pay-per-view portion, Sean O'Malley and Kris Moutinho, and then Irene Aldana kept that ball rolling. Then we get into the next one, and Tuivasa against Greg Hardy, and again, another banger of a fight. Tuivasa with Greg Hardy, they end up getting into a big exchange in round 1, and Tuivasa ends up getting staggered by one of the punches that Greg Hardy lands on him. He ends up staggering, he ends up on wobbly legs, and lands a punch himself that drops Greg Hardy face first onto the mat and wins the fight by knockout. Tuivasa ends up doing a shoooeeyy left and a shoooeeyy right and a shoooeeyy everywhere. Ends up getting fans pouring beer from the stands down onto him as he's walking out, and he's taking it all. The guy's fun. He's fun to watch. He's fun to listen to. He's fun to just be a part of, like, just to witness this guy do what he does. It's fun. It's enjoyable as a fan. Tuivasa ended up knocking out Greg Hardy. Irene Aldana stops Yana Kunitskaya, and Sean O'Malley stops Kris Moutinho. And this is all leading up to the co-main event between Gilbert Burns and Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. We finally got Stephen Thompson back into the octagon. Stephen Thompson, and the narrative that's following him is that this is the man that is getting overlooked for a title shot against Kamaru Usman. Why has he not had a shot against Kamaru Usman? His style would end up posing problems to Kamaru Usman. So with the win here against Gilbert Burns, it would have been a sure shot title fight for him. It would have been a sure shot ticket to get Wonderboy into another title fight, and this time against Kamaru Usman. It didn't go his way. It wasn't his night. He's had a long layoff. He came back. Gilbert Burns, of course, is just months away from his last fight, where he lost to Kamaru Usman in his title shot. So Gilbert Burns comes back. He gets back on the win column, and this was the sleeper of the fight, right? This is the one that put the crowd at ease. The crowd was on such a high from the previous fights, and then this one became more of a technical fight, and you started getting the crowd to boo. It ends up going to a decision win for Gilbert Burns, and it was very evident that the styles, that was the storyline leading into the fight, karate versus jiu-jitsu. It was very evident by the time that it was all said and done that jiu-jitsu and wrestling were the keys to this victory over the karate master and Wonderboy Thompson. Gilbert Burns fought a technical, tactical, strategic style fight against Wonderboy and did his job. Even though he got booed, he's back on the win column, and that's all that matters. Wonderboy ended up taking another loss. And then we move on to the main event, and the people showed up for this. Everybody was tuning into this, and this main event was between Dustin Poirier against Conor Mcgregor in a trilogy fight. Now, when these guys just fought earlier this year, they just fought at the beginning of this year, Dustin Poirier ends up knocking out Conor McGregor. The story of the fight was the calf kicks and the punching power that Dustin Poirier ended up displaying against McGregor. Here we are a few months back. Conor McGregor vowed to just have Dustin Poirier carried out on a stretcher, and it ends up being the other way around. Conor McGregor ends up leaving the arena on a stretcher with a broken leg. His leg cracks. It was nasty. It was horrible to watch. Leading up to that event from happening, they were in the middle of an exchange of punches where McGregor kicks, and now it looks like there's several videos that are floating out there. Dustin Poirier believes that it was one of the legs that he ended up checking. He checked it properly, injuring McGregor's shin, and then during that exchange, and he didn't during that exchange where McGregor doesn't end up stepping properly on his foot on the back foot as he sets it back as a stationary or his peg, he ends up rolling his foot. It didn't hold and it cracked and it looked nasty. Dustin Poirier's opinion. Now, there's videos floating around where Conor McGregor ended up doing that they believe that the injury happened later on during that last exchange where McGregor ends up sending a body shot, but rather ends up catching Poirier's elbow and forearm bone. And he ends up catching that, and it looks like the leg ended up having a weird reaction in slow motion, followed by him setting that foot back to stabilize him, and it didn't hold him, and he ends up falling back into the cage. Nonetheless, Poirier still landed some punches. It looked like it was going to be a similar ending to that of the second fight, which happened earlier this year. But instead, the referee's watching McGregor. McGregor couldn't get up. McGregor talks to the ref and tells him, "My leg's busted," and they end up waving the fight off. During those exchanges leading up to that moment, they had a really, really fun, intense fight where McGregor ends up getting the worst of the position. His back is against the mat. Dustin Poirier just landing some nasty ground and pound work on his face, elbows and punches to McGregor, but McGregor was fighting with such anger and such fire that he's landing punches and elbows and a hammer fist to Dustin Poirier as well. And in a matter of one round, the round didn't even get to end, but it was near its end. And in a matter of less than 5 minutes, these guys did more damage to each other's faces and bodies than they did in the second fight in 2 rounds. They came out with hatred, with vitriol, with vengeance on their minds, and they were hitting each other with bad intentions. Each punch, each elbow, each kick, McGregor ended up catching the better, came out with a different positioning, wide stance, more of a karate stance this go around, and was landing and getting the better of Dustin Poirier as far as the kicks were concerned. And as far as boxing, Dustin Poirier's boxing continues to improve, and it's just solid now. I know Max Holloway continues to say that he's the best boxer in MMA, but when the two fought, Max Holloway also made that claim, and Dustin Poirier shut that argument down. Now, that's when they fought a couple years back. Max Holloway, earlier this year, even though he's going through injuries and delays and obstacles right now, earlier this year against Calvin Kattar, he ended up showing a masterful, or displaying a masterful performance by way of boxing, and the way that he outboxed, outpointed, outclassed Kattar was second to none. Nonetheless, Dustin Poirier's boxing he was definitely outboxing Conor McGregor. I don't know how this fight would have gone, but it looked like momentum was on the side of Dustin Poirier as the first round was ending, and then this freak accident happened. We saw it happen earlier in the year with Chris Weidman. We saw this happen in years past with Anderson Silva against Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman, of course, suffered this against Uriah Hall earlier this year. So now it happens to Conor McGregor. Nonetheless, I mean, holy crap, for as long as it lasted, it lived up to the hype. These guys hated each other. These guys wanted to go at each other, and they did. They did just that. This wasn't a technical fight. They went after each other. And then even then, during the post-fight interview, Rogan's interviewing Poirier, and McGregor still just chopping at the mouth, just throwing stuff at throwing words, I guess, just profanity, Dustin Poirier's way, saying stuff, making comments, interrupting his interview, making hand gestures and signals for Dustin Poirier. And it was funny because it was a tweet that came out from Ronda Rousey, saying that the world-renowned Ronda Rousey, right? The famous Ronda Rousey, putting on a tweet saying how amazed she was. This is not verbatim, but it was in these words where she's basically giving props to McGregor, saying, this fight just ended as horribly as it did, and he's already promoting the next fight. just giving him kudos for doing that. That's pretty funny, and it's pretty cool to acknowledge that, because I didn't think of that. Everybody's seeing how nasty McGregor is, but people are criticizing him. Just remember this: in the last fight, nice McGregor, shaking hands, acknowledging, hugging Dustin Poirier, taking the hot sauce from him, and all this and all that. People were hating on nice McGregor. And now that the old McGregor comes back, the nasty McGregor, in your face, talking crap about you and your people, now all of a sudden he's out of line. So what is it? What do you guys want? The man is a master at marketing. The man is a master promoter, and he doesn't know when to stop. And he's good at what he does. And yes, Ronda Rousey is correct. Conor McGregor was already promoting his next fight, even though his leg is all mangled. Joe Rogan goes and sits on the mat and talks to him. Go figure. It was an event. This was an entire event. It was not your typical UFC card. And with that in mind, reach out to me. I want to hear from you. I want to know which one is your favorite UFC trilogy in the history that the UFC, in the history of the UFC. We've had some amazing UFC trilogies. I mentioned some of them earlier. I'm going to tell you mine. This is not up there, but I'm going to tell you mine. Yes, Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber was one of the favorites that I had, but when I really narrow it down, my number 2 has to be Chuck Liddell against Randy Couture. That trilogy, if you haven't watched it, if you're too young to know these fighters, please go find those fights and watch them. Educate yourself. Watch that trilogy. And the importance behind those fights at the time that it was happening. There was championship implications. There was titles that changed hands during those fights. That's my number 2. My all-time favorite trilogy in UFC history has to be between Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard. Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard left it all out. This was your Arturo Gatti Mickey Ward. This was your Morales Barrera of UFC and MMA. This was the equivalent to those boxing fights that have garnished so much praise and acknowledgement from the world. Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard, those fights were second to none. Frankie Edgar in the second fight ends up getting knocked out 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, and gets woken up by Gray Maynard's punches because the referee was not stopping it. He was letting him fight on and fight out of it, and it's evident where Frankie Edgar gets knocked out and then comes back to life and continues a fight, and fights so damn good in that fight that this fight ends up being called a draw. Just think about that. If you have no idea what fight I'm talking about, go find Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard and watch the trilogy. Yes, there was championship. These were championship fights. Title implications, something that we didn't have now. So I'm interested to hear about which one was your favorite. There's so many out there. I'm interested to hear from you. Again, now, what's the after effects, right? McGregor's going to be out for a while with this injury. By the time that his leg gets back, who knows? Have we seen the end of McGregor? I don't know. Is he going to come back? Maybe. But now we have a lightweight division with a Michael Chandler who's waiting to get into another fight. Tony Ferguson, who has had many classic fights. Maybe Tony Ferguson McGregor would be interesting to watch, a fight that's never happened. And Ferguson, who's on his way out on the latter stages of his career, a McGregor who seems to be on the latter stages of his career, especially with his injury. Who knows how much more he's going to have from this. You got Junior Dos Santos. You got Rafael Dos Anjos, who's out there. Benil Dariush, who ended up beating beating Tony Ferguson. You got Michael Chandler, who lost to Oliveira. Oliveira, of course, is the new king in this division with the retirement of Khabib. Charles Oliveira is the new king. He beat Michael Chandler, and now it looks like Dustin Poirier is headed that way. So that's what's awaiting Dustin Poirier in his career, to get back into a title fight. This time he's not going to be trying to unify the interim with the lightweight title as he did when he faced Khabib. This time he's going to be the challenger to the title that he feels has been rightfully his for a while now. We also have a Justin Gaethje sitting around there. I would love to see Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. That would be an amazing fight, and that would be a headlining event all on its own. Maybe a Dos Anjos with Dariush. That would be an entertaining co-main event. Here I am playing matchmaker, but those would be the fights that would make the most sense to me. But other than that, there's a lot of live dogs in that division. It's one of the most stacked divisions, and you guys that have been following me know that even though I've gone away from doing a lot of MMA and UFC episodes, not because I don't want to, it's because boxing has been so insane, so it's taken more of my time and more of my attention, because it's been one after the other as far as boxing. But look at what the UFC and Dana White have done this year. I mean, just think about it. We're in July, and it seems like Holloway and Kattar was such a long time ago, years ago, and it was just at the beginning of this year. The second fight between Poirier and Mcgregor. We've seen Adesanya dare to be great, trying to become a champ in his own right, challenging Jan Blachowicz. We saw Francis Ngannou avenge his loss to Stipe and take the title from him. He's the new heavyweight king. We saw Kamaru Usman beat the dangerous Gilbert Burns, whom everybody felt that Gilbert Burns was going to pose the biggest threat to Kamaru Usman. He defends his throne and then gets back in a rematch fight against Jorge Masvidal months later and knocks out Jorge Masvidal. That's what we've seen this year. I mean, it's just Charles Oliveira becoming the new king at the lightweight division. We've seen just some amazing fights this year already. The UFC is on point. Dana White is on point. They're putting on some amazing events. And there's many other fights that I'm not mentioning here just because my brain is a complete scramble at the moment, trying to remember all the other fights that have caught my eye this year. But I mean, Nate Diaz against wow, why is his name skipping me? Jeez. I mean, Michael Chiesa ended up fighting this year. Nate Diaz just had that amazing fight as well just a couple weeks back in Phoenix. Oh my God, in the Phoenix card, look, Adesanya ends up beating Vettori in the rematch fight. So much heat between the two and hatred. Adesanya makes it look easy as he returns and defends his throne in the middleweight division. And then the undercard of Nate Diaz. God, why can I not think of his name? I keep thinking of Love. This is not boxing. What's that guy's name? Deontay Love, or what's the boxer's name? Out of the Mayweather camp. I'll tell you right now who I'm thinking about. Nate Diaz ends up fighting Leon Edwards. Why am I thinking of Leon Love, or what's that guy's name? That guy that was arguing with Woodley on that Trilogy event. Leon Edwards looks to be the one that's in line for the title shot against Kamaru Usman after his victory over Nate Diaz. But that fight itself, if you watch that fight, Nate Diaz was about to knock Leon Edwards out as the fight is closing. It was exciting. But the co-main event, Davidson Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno running it back after they ended up coming with arguably the fight of the year last year. I'm not sure. I don't remember if they did get the fight of the year or not, but I know that it was in the talks. It was an amazing fight between these two. And now they got to run it back, and we had a winner this time. It was not going to be a draw. Brandon Moreno was on point. Brandon Moreno becomes the first ever Mexican-born UFC champion in history. and the ovation that he received, the crowd's reaction to this victory, his reaction, the fighter's reaction to the feat that Brandon Moreno ended up accomplishing, Deiveson Figueiredo's own reaction. What a humble man. As much crap as he talked, and I get it because the lead up to the fight and they got to represent themselves and the egos come into play and so forth. Very humble Deiveson Figueiredo in defeat, ends up lifting Brandon Moreno at one point, hugs him, expresses his gratitude for having been in the octagon with Brandon Moreno, and my respect grew for Deiveson Figueiredo. Belal Muhammad, who had that eye poke, nasty loss to Leon Edwards with the eye poke, or I think it was listed as a no contest, but he ends up coming back. He's back on his winning ways against Damian Maia. Damian Maia looks to be on his way out. Man, I'm just telling you, the whole reason that all of a sudden my brain's going crazy here, I'm doing a full recap of the Phoenix event now. The whole reason that I was bringing this up is because UFC 264, we're in the 7th month of the year. We're in the 7th month of the year, and this culminated what the UFC has not just done this year, but up to this point. So congratulations to the UFC, congratulations to the fighters, and to Dana White. My hat's off to him. I know this is a very small platform and he has no idea who the hell we are at this platform, who I am, or any notion of this platform. But my hat's off to him as a fan, as an MMA longtime fan and follower of the sport. What an amazing job he's done through the pandemic, and not just for MMA, not just for the UFC, but for sports in general. What he was able to do last year and put together the plan that he designed, everybody else followed suit. And because of what he did, we've seen some of the most amazing boxing fights. Top Rank ended up following suit with their own bubble, PBC, Matchroom, Golden Boy, and all the other sports, the NBA bubble. Football ended up coming back. And so thanks to Dana White, he ended up laying the floor plan for everybody, the blueprint for everybody, and people followed suit. And they're not disappointing. They're at an all-time best right now. And this fight culminated what the UFC has done, not just from its beginnings to where it's at now, but just in 2021 alone. Holy crap, it's one big fight after another, big cards, 3 titles on the line here, 3 titles on the line there. Amanda Nunes was in action earlier this year, and she's about to be in action again. She's the only one of all the champs, which began with Conor Mcgregor, who coined the phrase champ. It began there. Amanda Nunes is the only one to have reached this feat and still continues to defend her titles. Both of them. That's the only true champ making history each time that she steps into the octagon. We have many more big fights. I have no doubts that in the next 5 months, all this is going to seem like yesterday. And in the next 5 months, Dana White and the team, they're going to have even bigger fights for us to feast on. And this was a perfect event to have basically said, this is the first half or just past the first half of this year. Wait to see what we got for you guys next. And they've already announced that Nick Diaz is coming back. It looks like he's going to run it back against Robbie Lawler. That's a fight that ended up putting the UFC on the map in 2001, if I remember correctly. And that was part of the Fox Sports Best Damn Sports Show when Tom Arnold used to be a host on that show. Amongst the others that used to be there. So just think about that history between these two fighters and the history of the UFC where it was. And for Nick Diaz to come back and fight Robbie Lawler on a UFC stage, that's huge after being banned and all the stuff that he's gone through. I mean, sky's the limit right now. The UFC is in an all-time best moment. And this event did not disappoint. It lived up to the hype. However, again, this is the 3rd time I'm going to mention it. I want you guys to engage with me. Let me know which one was your favorite trilogy to date. If this was it, great. If this was it, great. Economically, financially, it makes sense. This is the biggest trilogy of all of them. to date. But I'll bet you something that if Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor get in the octagon again, that's going to outsell all these numbers and top all these numbers that we just witnessed a couple days back. So with that said, I'm throwing it out there and I'm going to tell you again, Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard, to me, that was the all-time best trilogy that the UFC has produced. You tell me which one was your favorite. I can't wait to hear from you guys. Take care of yourselves. Check out the episode later this week where I'm going to do the preview of Castaño and Jermell Charlo. That's a huge fight happening for boxing, and I give you my word that I'm going to start putting more MMA content out as well. Not just UFC, but I'm going to start touching base with the rest of the organizations as I've done in the past. At least recap episodes so we could see where we're at. There was several stars that moved around, like Anthony Pettis, Yoel Romero, Bumblebee Johnson, or Rumble Johnson at that. So a lot of action going on around. Also, this coming week, we're going to see the return of Miesha Tate, right? So she's going to be performing back in the UFC octagon. So that's also some big news. So I'll be doing a better job at covering not just the UFC, but MMA in general, as that's what we set out to do. That's what we set out to do here. And it's just that boxing has taken most of my attention as of late, and you can't deny it when we keep having these undisputed fights for all the belts and historic fights in the sports world, in the boxing world at that. So thank you guys again. Keep an eye out for that episode later this week. And I'll see you all on the next episode. Talk to you all soon. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. See you next time.